Skyrim is considered to be one of the greatest video games of all time. Longtime video game enthusiasts love to gush about this game, which makes sense. For most people back in 2011, this was their entry into RPG games. But what I've noticed is looking at YouTube today, there's been many videos about if Skyrim still holds up today. The main issue with that is most of these conversations have been biased, driven by nostalgia, and I don't blame anyone for it. But since it's my first playthrough of the game, I'd like to share my experience on what it feels like to play Skyrim for the first time and answer some questions. Is Skyrim overrated? Should you play it if you haven't already? And does it still hold up compared to modern RPG open world games? Hello, I'm Wispin, and today let's talk video games.
Hey, you're finally awake.
My first initial reactions to Skyrim seem to be like most others. It starts with an amazingly put together cutscene on this cart. Everything you see and everything you hear is perfectly designed by Bethesda Studios. Everything you need to know and learn as a part of the story and game mechanics is well showcased at the beginning of the game without just throwing you in an obvious tutorial level. Skyrim helps you build the basic understanding of the game before you move on, and the game lets you explore the open world. And I really praise this game for how perfectly executed this stage of the game is. With that being said though, my playthrough did end abruptly, like most, when I got to Riverwood, and that Minecraft player side of me said, "Oh, I need food. I'll just kill the chicken right there." Big mistake. The town didn't like that very much and decided as a punishment to repeatedly spawn kill me. After my initial challenges, I took some time to understand the game mechanics. I chose to hone in on my skills as a mage, and that helped me progress further in the world of Skyrim and what the experience has to offer. Even though Skyrim is an older game and the graphics aren't as defined as the newer modern day ones are, the overall atmosphere of the game still holds the test of time. Like I said earlier, everything you see is perfectly designed and was carefully constructed. Everything from the high mountains to the way the water flows was intended to exist for a reason. Every sound you hear has a reason to why you hear it. Picture this: you enter the world of Skyrim for the first time. You hear the birds chirping, and you look upon the vast horizon ahead of you. Meanwhile, the signature Skyrim soundtrack begins to play in the background. Playing the game for the first time was a surreal experience, and I know that sounds dumb, but I've never played a video game that's been able to master game design quite like Skyrim. Playing through the game feels like a movie and you are the main character. And I found that once I started playing Skyrim, I became so invested within that, I'd lose track of what time it was. The reason I believe Skyrim is so perfect at getting you hooked is the game has loads of content. There's the main quest, but many, and I mean many, side quests. And you aren't forced to do all the quests at all. If you wanted to, you could skip through the main quest altogether. I praise this way heavily on the way the developers designed the game, since it's one of the best examples of what a replayable game looks like. You've already played the game once? No problem, choose a different race, a new skill to master, and play the game however you like. You could even download mods if you wanted to take your playthrough to the next level. It makes sense why there is a genuine solid community that still plays to this day. I want to add as well that I've never been a big fan of the whole medieval theme because it's always been an overused concept in anything, even outside of gaming. But with Skyrim, the medieval experience was amazingly far from what my expectations actually were of the game. I've always felt that whenever I hop onto the game, it's extremely enjoyable and I never get bored. Between the landscape to the random events and locations, Skyrim is a masterclass at even when just traveling to a place to complete another quest. There's always something to do, and it's not just mindlessly walking around the whole way. But very specifically, the developers made sure that those random events aren't just dragging out the journey, getting interrupted by wolves, or like that one guy that was pretending that he needed help getting back to his camp, but then his old camp just kinda ambushes you. And even when a random task does take up your time, it's noted that the developers in a sense are making it worth your while. A great example of this was when I was trying to travel towards Skyhaven Temple. I got challenged to a duel by a dragon. I then won and went down to collect the loot when suddenly Meraki appears and absorbs the dragon soul as he presents the lines,
Not this time. This is one step closer to my desire.
This longer interruption was valuable since it's important to the lore and builds story and character in the main quest. The immersion is something I didn't feel you could get from any other game. It doesn't just feel like you are playing a game like if you were playing GTA. Skyrim feels like you are in that game, within that lifestyle. It feels very real. Moving on from a new player perspective, my initial thoughts were that it was just going to end up being pretty basic or clunky because of how old the game is. That didn't end up being the case at all, however. Combat has a specific feel to it that's definitely something to get used to. It was extremely satisfying once I got used to it, and combat was really easy to learn, which I appreciate a lot more than games that try to make combat more complex and harder to master. That really ruins a game mechanic that has lots of potential when not executed in the right manner, which is more so modern AAA games thinking that throwing money at things means it's good. Skyrim's not like that though, and it's something that is worth talking about that most modern AAA games mess up is progression. Replayability touches a little on progression, but not completely. We touched on quest design earlier, but I don't think it can't be mentioned that there's over 300 quests in Skyrim and it doesn't feel repetitive. You aren't forced to play a specific quest to complete the game, and I love that aspect. As a new beginner, sometimes you don't understand everything 100%, which makes sense. The fun of things is learning and then having that knowledge. There were times I made a mistake and did something I didn't want to do or start a quest I didn't want to complete yet. Skyrim gave me that freedom to go, okay, I don't want to do this now, I'm just going to leave and there isn't going to be any negative impact on the game from doing this. Skyrim's progression is amazing and I can't praise it enough. Combining that with the leveling system and skills, you have so many different ways to progress in this system unless you want your playthrough to be a replica in skill. As the last one, you have infinite options to pick through, but not too many to make it confusing or terrible from a gameplay standpoint. That being said, from a new player perspective, does Skyrim still hold up to this day? And I'd say yes. It makes sense. There's a whole chunk of reasons for why it still holds up and speaks to why Skyrim is a game that still has a huge player base and has never died down. It's a once-in-a-lifetime game to experience and one that doesn't come around much, especially in the modern era of terrible AAA games with Hollywood budgets that don't care about their consumers whatsoever. Skyrim does much better than the newly released ones. Bethesda had also been in favor of their audience and knew what they wanted for a new Elder Scrolls game. In no way, shape, or form can you find microtransactions or any way for Bethesda to squeeze out money out of their audience. Most importantly, they just knew how to make a game successful that wouldn't become outdated as time went on. If it came down to a list on what Skyrim does better than the modern era of games, I would say how to create a proper open world game. They pay attention to detail and understand game mechanics and how to give them longevity. And to answer the question from a non-nostalgic perspective, is Skyrim overrated? Most definitely not. So if you're wondering if Skyrim is worth the $50, from a new player, it 100% is. The Skyrim experience is something I very much recommend. And if you are looking to expand your video game taste, it's definitely the right one to play. But what do you guys think? What was your first playthrough like on the game of Skyrim? Or if this is your first playthrough, let me know down in the comments. But for now, it's been me, Wispin, and thanks so much for watching.